and welcome to all of those who are streaming live from the comfort of their homes. My name is Lisa Silverstone. I'm the Executive Director of Safe Harbors on Hudson, and I want to welcome you all here this evening while we celebrate International Artist Day, which seems quite a fitting thing for us to celebrate as an organization here in the city of Newburgh with a mission of transforming lives and building community through housing and the arts. We have here in our campus the Cornerstone Residence, which is 128 units of affordable supportive housing for our neighbors coming from homelessness, people living with mental health diagnoses, physical disabilities, and very low income working adults, and artists in need of affordable live workspace. We also have this wonderful lobby at the Ritz where we present these programs, and right behind this wall is the historic Ritz Theater, which we are working to rehabilitate as a large-scale performing arts space in the city of Newburgh, so stay tuned for that. We have the Safe Harbors Green, which is also a performance venue, a space for farmers markets and community gathering. So that's a wonderful asset. We have Trapeze here in the summer children's youth circus. And we have two Alice's and Gritworks, our two commercial partners. So we are really creating downtown vibrancy while also making sure we have housing equity for folks in our community. And I see June. Oh, and I'm sorry, I totally forgot our wonderful Ann Street Gallery. Thank you, June, for reminding me about the Ann Street Gallery. A contemporary art space that is professionally curated, is open Saturdays and Sundays from 1 to 5, and there's an exhibition up there now through the end of November. So I hope you come and check that out. I am going to have the pleasure of introducing our moderator, mediator, interlocutor, Edward Gibbons Brown, and then he will have the pleasure of introducing our panelists. But Edward has worked in many different capacities in the theater as an actor, a producer, a director. With his brother William, he started Hatmaker's Attic, and under the Hatmaker's Attic production company, he created over 20 productions and events. He's worked very closely with Safe Harbors of the Hudson. He's a true blue friend of ours who has not only worked with us when he was operating Hatmaker's Attic, but also during the pandemic when he created and hosted virtual programming to include Act and React, a program that he designed that explores how theater can spark conversation and change. Not unlike the conversation we're having tonight about the arts and how they can promote conversation and change. He was the director, videographer, and editor of Safe Harbors' original production, exploring and celebrating the iconic movie West Side Story on the occasion of its 60th anniversary. And we are delighted, he moved to New York City recently, and we are delighted that he came back this evening to lend his expertise and his talent to us once again. So welcome, Edward, and welcome all of the panelists. We are delighted to have you all here.
Well, Lisa, thank you so much, first of all, for that fantastic introduction. Very flattering to hear, and it's also really meaningful for me to return to this space, especially on International Artist Day. It's very powerful for me to be here with these panelists, who I will introduce in a moment, to discuss some issues around what it means to be an artist. Art records history, revolutions, rebellions. Sometimes it's a means to escape them, but no matter what's going on, there's no history or culture without art. I also wouldn't personally be here without art, nor without this venue or the people that make it what it is. So I would like to acknowledge that at Safe Harbors and in general, there's some materials in the front of the lobby there. Especially just what Ralph has done as artist in residence here at Safe Harbors. Really fantastic work, and I was pleased to hear about it and pleased to be helping out with this. So once more for Ralph. And then finally, of course, our three incredible panelists here tonight. I'm personally just really excited for the chance to talk to each of you just on my own, let alone for what I think will be a really special event. So we'll dive right in. So what I'll do is introduce all three of you, and then we'll go one by one for just a very short couple minutes of one-on-one conversation with each of you before we open up to the full panel. And then it will be a free-for-all. I'll pose questions. We can answer them in turn. We can jump in. We can see where the conversation takes us. I think it's just going to be exciting, and I'm really looking forward to it. So first, some introductions. To my immediate left, we have Corey Glover. As a founding member of the Grammy-winning, platinum-selling rock band Living Colour, Corey helped prove that not only could, as Corey puts it, black guys kick out the jams, they could also be embraced by a vast expanse of fans. Corey has sung to sold-out audiences around the world, both with Living Colour and as a solo performer. He's performed on stage in theatrical productions like Jesus Christ Superstar and appeared in films such as Oliver Stone's Platoon and others. So, Corey. Next we have Lotus with a Z. As a New York City native, Lotus has always been engaged in creative arts across disciplines. As a spoken word lyricist, she is living her passion to sing and perform. Lotus is a strong advocate against domestic violence and racial injustice, provides communities with crafts, services, and arts that entertain and inspire as part of her efforts. Lotus also won the Individual Arts Grant via Arts Mid-Hudson in 2021, and her work has been featured in the Poughkeepsie AMH Gallery and right here in the lobby at the Historic Ritz Theater. So. And on the my far left end of the stage, and your far right, we have Daniel Villegas, bilingual poet and MC, rhyming in both Spanish and English. Daniel assimilates how he sees the world with music and words, uses hip-hop as a means to teach others how to move through the world with a greater sense of themselves and with more enthusiasm in what they do. And as I mentioned to Daniel a moment ago, I listened to both his albums that are on Spotify on the way up here on the train ride and love them. So, Daniel. So let's start with a quick little one-on-one chat, Corey. I'd love to hear about some of the challenges that you've individually faced as a pioneering figure in the rock music industry, and how have you navigated them?
Rent. Rent has been one of the biggest problems. Or mortgage, yeah. It's being an artist means so many things to so many different people. For myself, I've always felt like I was an artist because everything else that I try to do in the context of, the normal world, I could not do very well. So what I could do was I could act, I could sing, I could write. Those were my gifts, and I had to make sure that I use those gifts to the best of my abilities. And that's what's most important to anybody that wants to be an artist, who is an artist, is that your gifts are for everyone and not just yourself.
Is that something you feel a sense of responsibility about?
Absolutely. You're asking about the challenges that we faced. When Living Colour first started, the whole supposition was there weren't any black hard rock bands. There was a sort of a de facto sort of apartheid when it came to radio. That there was black radio and there was white radio, and the two never really mixed. Only on very special occasions. So we found ourselves challenged by that notion, and oftentimes doing it was in and of itself a act of defiance and of protest, of really showing people around that this is for everybody, that art is for everybody. It should not be segregated.
You mentioned that separation that existed between these kind of cultural bubbles, and do you see Living Colour as having moved the needle on that? And more generally, music and art in general, how do you see those things driving conversations and driving change?
I think art is the only thing that really drives change home. You wouldn't, if you think about the songs from the 50s and the 60s that were protest songs, you think of Arlen Guthrie and you think of Woody Guthrie, and you think of all the music that's even come from here, right from here, and sort of changed the whole idea of what the world is and how it changes. It's always there. It's always a part of the process. You can't march without a beat. You can't move without something motivating. So art and music, at least for me, music, and to a larger degree, all of the arts are integral to making change, make significant change.
Do you think that art is as effective, more effective, or one of the effective ways to communicate the necessity for change or mechanisms of change, or even just within the heart?
Well, that's what music for me. That's what art is. They are they're transposing what's going on in your heart and in your soul out to the rest of the world. It's the amplifier for that kind of thing. So yes, it's necessary. It is a very necessary component. You have to sort of be able to express yourself in a way that motivates and moves people. It has to be done.
On that note, let's shift the conversation over to Lotus for a quick one-on-one. Lotus is a multidisciplinary artist. Do you find inspiration across different art forms? If so, how? And then how do you incorporate those different, both inspirations from different art forms as well as your own different forms? How do you incorporate all that together into an output that is uniquely Lotus?
I think you took all my answers.
He took your answers.
You gotta pay me too, huh?
So I feel like art is life. I feel like art is life and life is art, right? So essentially, art reflects what happens in life. So for me, inspiration comes from me wanting to, the passion that I have to tell the story of what's happening in my life and also what's happening to others. It's a difficult thing to touch on for me because, not difficult to where I can't speak on it, but for people to digest. Because the work that I have is not, the work that I do is more like in your face. Like, I'm not going to sugarcoat anything, this is what it is. This is what's happening in our life.
So, what makes your work particularly...
So, I'm not going to say it's vulgar or anything like that. Or say it's vulgar, but it's real. It's real because this is really happening. For instance, the things that's happening in the Black community from way back. We have different artists that, much like Mr. Glover, that is trying to break these racial barriers and things like that, So for me, in my generation or this day and age, with my work, what I'm trying to do is show like, look, this is what's going on. This is what's going on, like kind of really in your face. And I tie it all together from my spoken word to visual art and also musically, I guess, musically lyrics,
Do you think that whether it's visual art, spoken word, or music, or any other discipline, are these just sort of different facets of what you feel you have to express as an individual, as an artist, or are you sort of thinking this is going to be the best medium for this part of my message, and I'm going to fuse them this way?
That's a good question. I think for me, it's how I express it, much like Lisa. I told you on my answers, but I really think that it's a way that I'm choosing to express it. I used to dance as well, and that was a different form of expression, right? But with my age, don't ask me my age, it's not like, lady.
Wasn't
No, but with my life experience and the things that I'm personally experiencing as a mom, as a Black mom in America, this is the way I feel like I need to express it. Yeah.
I don't have a question, but I'm just fascinated. Keep going.
Yeah.
Yes.
Do you feel you had mentioned Corey in particular, but more generally, people who broke barriers in previous generations? Do you feel a sense of that legacy as you look at different disciplines? If you want to look at communicating something through dance versus poetry, for example, are you thinking about how the legacy of previous generations of artists in those forms come together in your work?
Oh man, I want to say that I am so grateful for my ancestors and those that came before me. Was basically paving our way to make this happen. I'm sorry, right then. I got so many things on.
No, I mean that's beautiful, and it sounds like both the legacies of those ancestors as well as your own personal experiences individually and as part of your community are sort of with you in every moment as you approach making that.
Absolutely. I feel like, I may be jumping around here, but I feel like it's my responsibility, because I do have children. But even if I didn't have children at this moment, I have this type of activist, right? But I've always put myself out there to make sure the things that are morally right to be done. That may be a perception thing. People may feel like, or ethic. People may feel like one thing is right, one thing is wrong. But for me, I feel like it is my responsibility to showcase what's happening and trying to drive that change in a sense with my work, even if it costs that one moment, that reflection. I had a piece, an exhibit that I did called Reflect, and every single piece is about some type of reflection, and it's supposed to force a person, and I'm not trying to be mean or anything like that, but you have to face reality. And I wanted to force people to look at what's really happening, but also from within themselves, outside themselves.
So on the subject of fusing different disciplines of art, Daniel, how do, for example, freestyle rap and spoken word poetry intersect? And what impact do you find that they have on audiences in your own work?
I feel, number one, the ability to express yourself, right? It tells you a lot, one, where society is at, because we're like a reflection of society, right? It's dependent, of course, of the work that we do internally, but as artists, we reflect what society is going through. So when I started freestyling, I was able to learn kind of how to tap into the consciousness, right? The consciousness that's around, and that's where I get most of my freestyles from. It's not like I just sit and practice, okay, this is what I'm gonna say. If I'm in this place, in that place, I just tap into consciousness. So I think being able to really dive into yourselves and give yourselves the opportunity, right, to express yourself in a way that it also helps somebody else, that we start a dialogue, we have a conversation really on how to make things better.
That's powerful. So a little bit about your personal journey with writing poetry, emceeing, and all the many different forms that you fuse. How did that journey begin, and what directed you towards the mediums of art that you ended up engaging with and pursuing?
I would have to say the first influence in my life was my grandmother. She passed away in '98, but since I was young, she always introduced me to music. So she would play folklore guitar from Colombia, and I would learn and I would play congas to her, So that first got me into music. Like, she was my entrance on how to fuse music and how to combine what I love to do with music. Then it wasn't until I would say 17, 16, when I first heard my Mos Def. And I was like, oh, this is dope. How did you put words together like that? And before, I'd never written. And then I tried to write. And, something we do as human beings, when we love something, we mimic it. So I tried to mimic his style, the way he phrased his words, and I started to write. And I was like, oh, this is dope. But I didn't perform it until I got into like 18, into college, where I started writing my own things. But I would say Mos Def was one of the biggest influences I had into rap, right? Because he didn't just rap, like he was able to phrase so eloquently what he saw, and he did it in such a rhythm, like his rhythm of how he jumped on that beat, and I was like, oh, I want to be able to do that.
Well, there's some common themes emerging just from these 3 one-on-one conversations. I mean, you both discussed responsibility, whether it's a responsibility to use your artistic gift or a responsibility to think about social causes. We've been talking a little bit about authenticity and where you're in your art. And I'd love to go deeper into both of those areas. Let's start with authenticity a little bit. Embracing authenticity as artists and the personal journeys involved in finding, expressing and expressing your unique artistic voices. It's something that I think is universal for anyone on an artistic journey, and something that obviously all 3 of you have have gone through and come out the other side with a unique and vivid artistic voice. So when we talk about embracing authenticity as individuals and artists, I think a good place to start is just how do we define it? What is authenticity, both as an individual and as an artist? What is authenticity to you?
I think number one is being true to yourself, right? True to your emotions, true to how you express yourself, true to your influences, right? I think that's what makes us as a whole an artist, right? The more we are able to connect with ourselves deeply inside, and we're able to project that, and not project it in a bad way, right? Like we're saying, this is my views, these are the way I want things to go. I mean project literally like a soundscape when you use your voice and somebody hears it. I mean, like truly, genuinely expressing yourself and being true to the nature of how you feel inside.
And what is that distinction between expressing it in a bad way versus, I guess, in a good way?
Well, you know, if we want to use good and bad as in, I would say expressing it in a good way would be, helping somebody else, right? That when you do it, brings somebody else, whether you're uplifting them, when we're uplifting our community, using our voice. And sometimes, this is like the whole thing of like when we want to express, are we constructive or destructive? And I think being destructive is the outcome of so many suppressions in our society. So not always are we exposed to an alternate way of expressing ourselves, so we do it in a negative way. And I think that's the key with as artists and as a community to be able to like have that dialogue, right, and give that opportunity to talk.
And really as individuals too, I think. I mean, if we're going to be authentic, even just as an individual, art aside, we're already shaping it a little bit, right? We want to ideally be not destructive in how we express our authenticity.
This is the thing. When a baby cries, right? And the baby's frustrated, and the only way he or she knows how to get your attention and to express themselves is to scream and yell. Now, to certain ears, it's noise. To other people, it's a cry for help, literally a cry for help. I'm hungry, I'm wet, you're not paying enough attention to me. So there is no paradigm of good or bad with any of that stuff. What it could be, in some cases, that you're saying something as it is, and it's up to you as the person who's hearing it to determine as to whether it is helpful or a hindrance. And you have to know, in order for you to really get a true sense of it, you have to know where that comes from. You talk about most. I've known most for a very long time. And I know where most comes from. I understand where in Brooklyn he's from and what his influences are and where he came from and all that stuff to where he stands the way he did. You heard most at a certain point in his career, and you extended that, right? Because you heard it in a particular way, hearing it from your own particular understanding, correct? So the idea of expressing something is always a continuum from one to the next to the next. And we have to be mindful of what that is and understand that the mechanisms that make that work are communications, are ultimately about communication, about getting to you as you got to me, and I take that and bring it on to someone else, and Daniel takes it to someone else, and and we all figure out how we figure it all out that way. You understand?
Hello. I'm back. So I think when we talk about authenticity, I have a strong feeling, in my opinion, and allegedly, no, I'm just joking. We have to be intentional. Okay, we have to be we have to do things purposefully. So we talk about right and wrong. At the same time, we talk about perception. So to someone else, wrong may be right, and vice versa. right? So when we do our art or our respective arts, we do it in a sense of getting that feedback and stuff like this, you know. But I definitely think that we should start with what is our intentions, and that starts from diving within. Oh, I have a piece on that too. It's called From Within.
What's it called?
From Within.
From Within?
There's a two-part piece to that. There's a poem that's called From Within that ties to my painting. It's really a deep piece. I'm not going to describe it. You have to see it next show. But it's ... from within. But yes. Thank you.
So what makes it hard for aspiring artists to embrace their uniqueness or their authenticity, or to navigate that sort of false paradigm of good and bad and find a place in that continuum?
It feels like it's community. It's where you are and who encourages whatever that thing is that you need to express is. If you're around people who feel a certain way and that thing influences how you get to wherever it is that you want to get to, for you to then pass it on. So it's a continuing community advocacy. And if you live, work, if you exist in a certain group of people or a group of individuals, you'll get all the information that you need to be able to express that.
So would that be considered trending? What's trending? What's popping? What's popping? It's really popping, right?
So, but we've digitized it and put it out into the atmosphere. But it starts at home. It starts with, I'm sure you sit and talked about your grandmother and what she gave you, and you took that in. We all have had that kind of encouragement to be able to express ourselves. You can, I'm sure all of us can remember that Saturday morning, and whatever that music was playing in the house when your mother was cleaning the house, that's part of that. Whatever your friends were listening to in terms of music at the time, or whatever art they were consuming at the time, that's a part of you. And it's a communicable thing. It's about all of us.
It's contagious.
Absolutely.
I went down here. Are you supposed to say something?
Were you about to say?
No.
Is there a role for, if you're an artist who has come from, or an aspiring artist who has come from a community or a background that lacked that sort of support, encouragement, or even influences, the song that was playing on the radio, or the person who encouraged you to try writing a song or painting. If you either don't have that in your own background, or you're part of a community where there's not enough of that, what as an artist, and tying it back to authenticity, does the lack of certain things like that in your own background, could an artist bring those into a positive impact on their community?
Well, there's a good expression, one seeks its own level. And if you have a desire to, if you have a need to say, express yourself in some particular kind of way, I think it's fortunate for the artist that there are places that they can go and places they can see. If something inspired you, something in the artist's life has inspired them to do whatever it is that they think they can do. If you saw a piece of art, you went to a museum. If you heard a musician out in the street, if you heard a piece of music on the radio, and it struck you in a particular way that you felt like it spoke to you, and I have the opportunity to speak in that voice, or through that voice. The only thing that would people who would discourage you, people who would tell you that that's not what that is, aren't a part of your family, aren't a part of your community. They're doing just the opposite of that. And I don't believe that there are people who truly do discourage it in a real way, because if you really want to do it, you do it. And not for nothing, everybody's an artist. Everybody is a communicator. These people here, all four of us, do it in a particular way, but we all have a way, a means, and a way of expressing ourselves in beautiful and sometimes not so beautiful ways. But it's all art, as far as I can see.
Daniel, is there vulnerability in authenticity?
Oh, yeah, I think so, you know. And I'll speak as a Latino male, right? Not just society, but sometimes part of our culture, right? Our upbringing. It's very easy to get lost in what's put upon you, right? As a Latino growing up, it's very easy to get lost in the machismo way of this is just the way things are, right? And I think when you're able to be like, you know what? And this is where the art comes with, you know, I think any writer who really taps into themselves knows what it is to be vulnerable, because you start speaking on topics that normally most people won't speak about. And then you have to do it in a sense where you don't lose yourself as well when you're expressing yourself. So yeah, I mean, I feel vulnerable every time I read a poem. You know, I'm like, whoa, I went deep into myself, and it's easy to get lost in, oh, would I be judged by these opinions? Would I be judged by the way I'm seeing life right now? So I think, yeah, that's very prominent. But the beautiful thing out of all of that, and Corey was talking about that support system. You know, when you are supported and you're guided through your process, you're able to make it out on the other side much better. And you're more likely to influence somebody else in a better way, right? Because you're now seeing the support that you had when you were at your most vulnerable state.
I think that's real interesting. I think it's real interesting because my upbringing, I'll just go back a little bit, I didn't have that support. And something interesting that you said, Mr. Glover, you said
I'm
that,
Corey. Mr. Glover's my father, and he's not already.
I'm Corey. It said something along the lines of, if you want to do it, you will do it. Am I paraphrasing? So for me, oh my goodness. Again, I'm not going to say my age, but I have been through so much. And I didn't have that support system. Even though I had people around me and so on and so forth. Growing up, I was always, it was always the opposite. So it wasn't support, but it was, well, you can't do that. You can't do that. No, you can't do that, like people would say. But then when I'm outside of those areas, I would be like getting this type of support from others. Like, oh, snap, you could do this, you could do that. And I'm like, wait, so now I'm at the crossroads, right? Because on one hand, I'm raised a certain way, and then I have this force pulling me to do this other thing, or I'm doing that, right? But I'm just like in between.
Let me ask you a question.
Oh.
The people that you felt that were discouraging you, did you do it despite them? Did you do it because when they said you should do that, you need to be doing this, what motivated you to keep going? Was it their opposition, or was it the fact that you heard voices that spoke to you, that encouraged you?
I think it was more like an energy, like something. I'll figure this out. I think it was more so energy that was telling me or pulling me to keep going, keep doing. And I've always been, I guess you could say, a rebel, you know, but it was not a rebel in the sense of I was doing something bad. You know, we go back to the bad and good thing, right? You know, growing up in the city, from the Bronx, right? But growing up in the city, you have these different expectations because you're from the block and all this other stuff. You're in this school, you're in that school, and whatnot. You know, but it's never really a push. Well, for me anyway, it wasn't a push to do something great. Like for instance, I played basketball. I also did ballet at the same time, but I wasn't pushed to do either. You know, I was just like, I think I can do that.
and I did it damn good. My language, sorry, kids in the room, my bad. But at the end of the day, I think for me personally, in my opinion, and allegedly, I'm saying it wrong on purpose, just so you know. But I felt, even from young, I felt the responsibility to go for, like, to be inspirational to other people. Like, it was so crazy. I'm sorry, I'm having mad flashbacks right now. No, but go ahead. Thank you.
Well,
I'm sorry. No, I was just gonna say, I think your purpose, you found your purpose.
Yes.
You found your purpose despite what you thought were, what we'll call negative reinforcement. Like, you know, for me, in my life, black dude, and I'm from Brooklyn, and Brooklyn was not hearing about hard rock. Where I'm from in Brooklyn was not hearing about hard rock bands, right? But I heard it, and that wasn't going to stop me. And I got as many negative reinforcements about it as I got what we'll call negative, as I got positive reinforcements. But I did find my family. I found Vernon, the guitar player, who lived 6 blocks away from me. I didn't know who else was on my block who knew all that, who had that kind of thing. That the drummer who's from the Bronx, you found him. We found each other, and through that process, we were able to create. So the apparatus that we talk about is really an internal fortitude. Like, I know I can do these things. I know, you know that basketball and ballet, I can do them both. Daniel knows that what's inside of him needed to come out, right? And that, to sort of tie it all back in, is the soul of an artist. Is that understanding that the world needs to hear what I have to say, and that it's there. And like I said, we all have that. We all of us. Anybody hearing the sound of my voice has the ability to express themselves. Anybody out there on the street has something to say. How they say it and the way that they say it is as unique as they are.
And it's coming from something intrinsic within you. I mean, which is I think a profound statement of authenticity. And yet it doesn't happen in a vacuum, right? I mean, whether or not you have that encouragement or discouragement can be determinative, certainly not in whether you are an artist as a human, as I agree with Corey, we all are, but in whether you're able to develop those skills, pursue those skills, have some measure of success with that. And so I think that ties pretty nicely into the discussion of art as activism, because we are all existing in this web of community and society, and art can be a powerful tool for changing, for inspiring social change, and for motivating advocacy. Art itself can sometimes be advocacy. I'm interested in what ways artists can both collectively and individually, right? Because there is, the arts as a whole, but there's also each of you as individual people. In what way can artists use their platform or their creativity, right? Because some artists don't have a platform. So I know this is a little complicated the way I'm phrasing this, but in what ways can artists collectively or individually use their platform or creativity to address social issues and inspire change?
I think it would be dependent upon the artist, because it depends on how they want to convey their message. With me, I'm not quiet with my work, like I said earlier, but I'm not vulgar either, right? But I mean, to some people, it may say something else, but it also is in the message that's received, because perception is a thing, but yeah, I might come back around.
Yeah, I think a lot of it development, like Corey said, the support system. But it's very interesting, in the world that we're living, right? How we find our voice, and I think that's the biggest key is one, how we find our voice, and what kind of platforms we have as individuals, right? So I just got back from Mexico City, and I've never been there before. But as soon as I got there, I was like, wow, this is very similar to Colombia. The streets, the way the buildings are, the energy's somewhat similar. That if you know anything about Mexico City, it was very heavily by the Aztecs, which were the rulers at that time. So the person who brought me out there was called Boca Floja. He's a Mexican rapper, and he used his platforms to bring me out there, right? And I was able to connect with the system, the underground system, or we call underground hip hop out there, right? And I'm like, okay, right now we have this clash between, and it's been for a while, Israel and Palestine, right? So he used that platform to express not just his views, but a way that we could assist and help, right? So once again, it's like our network as artists, as we start having different networks around the world, it's how we use who we know in our network to assist sometimes, those who are in need or in making a change, in our community. So
That sounds like sort of an individual level. What are some ways that either you have seen or would like to see the arts collectively impacting social change and affecting advocacy?
I think it's doing it. And the pendulum sort of swings both ways. Sometimes it's doing everything. It's doing all the heavy lifting. Sometimes it is not. But it's assisting the whole time. If I'm trying to give you an example of that, the idea of making substantive social change starts in the street, right? And how you see it and how you relate to it. As I said, that the whole idea of the social system has become digitized, and now we're hello folks streaming right now. But if you see scenes of Cuba, right, and if you could see what's going on in Cuba and see what's happening here and connect the two. You can see what's happening in Mexico City and see how similar it all is. And you can see that there is a real global idea. And you as an artist, and what your platform is, whether it's huge or whether it's small, as you see, I see you. What you have to say to your question is, I see it. I see it for what it is. I see how it impacts the other and myself, making us both in a similar situation. And if I can amplify who I am as to amplify who they are, whoever they are, that will sort of rev the engine. It will start the wheels to clicking as to making some sort of social statement, some sort of statement about the world. We've been talking about hip hop. The social impact of hip hop was that the global impact of hip hop, I should say, was because people saw themselves in it. That the kids that saw the graffiti saw themselves in the graffiti, saw the expression of the graffiti. Those who heard any particular rapper, whoever it was, heard themselves in that music and decided that was the platform that they were going to use to make that work, right? So, thank you for the thoughts. But those are the sparks. those are the building blocks to that thing. And you were talking about authenticity earlier. The authenticity comes from knowing that whatever that expression is, whether it's, whether it's Mos Def or it's Drake. Don't at me. I don't want to know about it. They're coming from their own place. They're coming from their own experiences. Now you can judge its truthfulness to your own life. You compare it to your own life, and you can compare and contrast and find yourself in it or out of it. And that's your guide. That's your judge as to how I'm making my own expression, and that's authentic to me. And I'm finding myself within the context of all of the things that are out there.
Oh, I'm sorry. Can I ask you a question? That's her.
I'm just sitting here thinking, because we could talk about all the good stuff and everything like that, so I'm not going to get a very bad news or anything like that, but at the end of the day, we, as artists, I feel like personally, in my opinion, and allegedly, got to base that. We have a responsibility, right, to showcase whatever it is that we're showcasing from whatever position that we're coming from, right? But I feel like it's really dangerous because we're talking about platforms, we're talking about digitization. Did I say that right? Digital world, right? We talk about all of this, right? And we combine everything with these different social changes and things that's happening in the norms and things like that, right? But then the flip side of that is people are doing it for so-called clout, or they're doing it just to do it for money, or whatever their purpose is for doing it. But there's it's a dangerous game when it comes to that, because what are their intentions? We would never know a person's personal intention, right? They could sit here and be a fraud all day, and we would never know. And they could hit you in the head like, oh, you gotta come out, you gotta do this, this, and the third, and low key, they're a bad person, But then that's subjective in itself too, right? How a person views good or bad, right? But these platforms these days, and it's becoming, in my opinion, right? And nobody's gonna say it, allegedly, it's dangerous to me, how I feel like it's also a good thing that we have these platforms, like for instance with Ralph. Yo, my boy is so lit, just saying. Can we get a round of applause for my boy? But I'm just saying, like, in his platform, they're touching on he's touching on every aspect of art, right? And he's using his platform to bring positivity and positive change, but also highlighting the things that are negative, right? But there are people, and I'm not saying Ralph or McGuire or anything like that. I'm just saying there are people that does the same thing, but are doing it wrong. If I'm saying that right, I don't know. It's really.
Well, that's what you're talking about with authenticity.
Yeah.
If it's authentic, you'll see it. Authentic. But sometimes, let's put it in the context. The things that you might see on TikTok or whatever, or you get some meme shows up, and you laugh at it and go, it is what it is. But then when you hear something that is authentic, that is truthful, that does take the time to express exactly what it is, how it is, and how they are, you are blown away by it. Not for nothing, there's enough really good things in this world that you can tell when the inauthentic exists. And there's enough beautiful pieces of work, of art out there that will automatically make you see, oh, this ain't real. You're not real. You're doing this for the clicks. I get it. That's very funny. Good for you. Make your money. Do whatever you need to do. But there's also a flip side that is bigger, much more beautiful, and much more, as Ed says, authentic. And you can choose. That's what the internet to me is. It's a choice. And you can go down this street, you can go down that street. One of these streets is well lit and it's brightly colored. It's got shiny things, but they got alleys in it. And then there's another one that's a little less of the shiny, but it's intriguing. It has a lot more going on to it. And you can find the beauty in either one of those.
Can artists actually mobilize people to pursue activism, advocacy, or social change beyond engaging with the artwork itself, maybe agreeing with the message, and hoping for whatever that better world might be? Can artists actually mobilize people to take action?
Ask Beyonce. She could say at any point in time, anywhere in the world, I need you to go to City Hall and do such and such and such. And it won't be, it may be 1,000 people or maybe 10 people, but they'll go. There are artists that have that kind of pull, I think. I don't.
But you did though. You thank you. I'm gonna say like what your group did, what you did. Like hold on, let's give you a round of applause. But no, you broke the barriers, man. Like, I mean, and then this part, I'm sorry, I'm not trying to dive all into it, so you can tell your story, but from my understanding, you broke these barriers and they try to flip things and they try to say that, they originated something when you were over there doing it already. Like, what? Yo, kudos to you. That's all I'm gonna say. Sorry.
No, but I think, if you're looking at me or looking at what we've done as an inspiration, that's one thing. But what I was alluding to is that if you have a platform, no matter how big or how small that platform is, if you as the artist are motivated enough, you could get people to do a lot of things. Letter writing campaigns have started because of music. Whole, regimes have been toppled because of music. Things have been built based on some piece of art that somebody saw. Picasso motivated a whole country into seeing the world in a particular way. There's enough. That's the power of art, of all kinds of art. That architecture. It's not just that. We live in a city that
in Barcelona, right?
Right. We live in a city that was built primarily by artists. Downing Park was built by artists. This space was built by people who had a love of the places that they were in and to use the resources that were provided to them by being here to make beautiful homes, to make thoroughfares, streets, everything, from the church down the block to, somebody's house over on Liberty Street. All this stuff is art. All of it is art. And it motivated them enough to create something. Because that's all you really are as an artist, is a creator. You create something out of whatever's going on between your ears.
With that context in mind, Daniel, can you think of an example of an artist or a piece of art whose personally impacted your social worldview?
Well, he spoke on Cuba, and I've seen a lot of great art, especially depicting the revolution, right? And we look at Cuba, like it inspired a lot of things in Latin America. It inspired many people in the United States, and when we talk about art, before we even get to music, let's just talk about, we have gallery spaces here. People put art and their views on life. When I first saw my first depiction of Che Guevara, Argentinian part of the Cuban Revolution, I was like, okay, so I read up on it. I studied a little Latin American studies in college, so I was kind of already gotten to read about these things that were going on in Latin America. But when I saw, the fist, the flag, when I saw soldiers on the floor dying, I was like, oh, okay, this is more than just what I'm experiencing in this little university that I go to, right? So I'm like, okay, I have to, and I took it upon my responsibility to speak a little bit more about my culture, right? My experiences of what's going on in my side of the world, in Latin America, right, in the Caribbean, and I took it upon myself and saying, how can I phrase what's going on there and make it accessible to the people here, right? To the students in my college, to the places around in my neighborhood. How can I make it accessible? And it all started with that one little graffiti art style picture that I was like, oh, I gotta speak on it. So.
Public Enemy. That logo for Public Enemy says more to me than anything else. It's obviously a man in the crosshairs. That says it all. There's nothing more to me. There's nothing more beautiful, more artistic, and says volumes without having to see it. To see a photograph of Che, or to see some of the revolutionary art that's on the walls. It's not in a gallery. It's not in a. It's not being displayed behind glass. You know what I mean? When you on the subway back in the day, and Gandhi was had his things up on the train, it's like that's exactly where I'm at. You know what I mean? It's that spoke more to me than anything else. Than this was an eyesore, graffiti.
And we'll go left to right.
Okay.
Exploring and expressing the arts is good for my sanity.
Sometimes.
We'll accept the sometimes. Yeah. We'll allow equivocation.
That's like one of those psych tests, right?
That's right.
Like,
Acceptable. We'll accept equivocation. So, technology and digital media have positively impacted the arts.
Again, this is sometimes it
both.
does.
Yeah, both.
All the questions, maybe.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Agreed.
Yes and no.
Yes, and yes.
I say both. That's it.
If you had to, this one I will drill down a little more on. If you had to give one answer, overall, on balance, in totality, technology and media, net good, net bad. And I know we're not, we'll impose a good bad kind of framework on for this one.
I'll take that mention.
Yes.
I think, wait, what was the question?
Technology and digital media, net positive, net negative for the arts.
Oh yeah, I had a good question on that. Okay.
It's so tough to say. I mean, before technology, the amount of people that could be reached now through technology is incredible. So you could really influence, we speak about these new influencers, they can really influence some incredible stuff. But at the same time, the opposite side could be shown, and they could influence some incredible stuff, that puts people way behind where we were before technology. So it's tough.
Yeah, we're in kind of like a, let's wait and see with our knuckles white when it comes to AI, right? Not to go off on a whole
You
sketch.
took my answer. I was gonna say that.
Yeah, that would be kind of a whole other panel discussion about that.
Right.
The whole thing, and June and Lisa and everybody on that side of the aisle will attest that everything that we have here is a form of education, right? So you can get an education walking down the street. You can get an education. You can get edified by art. It can do that for you. Fortunately, you can find that through technology. You know, you couldn't get to the Gaudi Museum unless you went to Barcelona. Now it's online. You can see this. You can see these paintings. There's every piece of music ever made is online somewhere. Every you're talking about social changes. Every dance craze that exists right now is because you saw it on TikTok. It's not so it's all there, but then there's some other things that you just don't need to look at and don't want to look at.
I have questions. Is digital media, is that art?
Yeah.
Like, yo, if you look at it, right? Sorry, okay,
I know some people who use the medium and have used the medium of the internet as they use the medium of TV, as they use the medium of radio, as they've used the medium of drums. It's a continuum. It's all
Do you have
there.
any questions from the audience?
May I ask this? I have questions from the audience. What about from the youth? Anything from the youth?
Lisa has a question.
I have a comment. Is that allowed?
Of course.
Okay.
Depends on the comment.
Well, we were talking about inspiring. You were asking them about how are you inspiring or speaking to aspiring artists, emerging artists, young people. And I want to say that just seeing here, and I'm thinking of Daniel in particular because I've seen it a few times happening, but all of you in your own way. I've seen Daniel on the stage doing his spoken word freestyle, and I feel like something literally cracks open on the park where everything, it's like this crack open, and it allows them, you can just see people gravitate to the stage, and they're now comfortable telling their truth. So I think you are going to be like your grandmother. I think that people will say, Daniel spoke his truth on that stage, and it cracked open a portal for me to go in and speak my truth. And I know you're all doing that. I've just actively seen Daniel do it. And it's palpable out on that park when I see people respond and lean forward and creep toward that stage. And I think that, you know, you all are kind of, you're opening that door for people to speak their truth and be their authentic self. So I so appreciate that. And I appreciate you bringing that right here.
Thank you.
Well, to add on to that, I can tell you Daniel has cracked open, as you put it, two people in my family, one of which was a first. I actually got up at one of our open mics and said something, which is so not me. I'm always behind the scenes. So I've seen the positivity of that, specifically with my grandson. You know, so there's a lot to be said about it. You know.
Thanks.
Thank you.
And I also want to say one thing, just because I was thinking about the questions as you were asking them. I feel like in the Hudson Valley, it's the beauty of the Hudson Valley that's the piece of art. When I was driving around
There's the
yesterday and
answer.
I was seeing the foliage and the river, I'm like, this is the piece of art that inspires so much in the Hudson Valley.
Inspire the people to want to live here
Right.
in the middle of this.
I have a question. What does 2024 look like for you?
Busy.
Wow, yes.
Yeah. I'm
Anyone else?
inspired. I'm inspired. I see so many things happening now till next year and so on. I just hope that those that are not here present with us continues to do their thing too. You know, and don't stop no matter what they're experiencing.
Ed, I have a question for you.
Sure.
What does 2024 look like for you? Coming back to Beacon? No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding.
2024 for me looks like continuing to live a overly expensive lifestyle in New York City and try to make theater art. And that's not me living an overly expensive lifestyle; it's an overly expensive city. Continuing to try to make art and try to put into practice everything I was looking to learn and absorb from these folks tonight.
I see another panel discussion.
I
Yes.
think the question you just raised, again, could be a whole other panel discussion. I feel like I could sit here talking to the three of you for hours and hours and hours. We should probably let these people go home pretty soon. However, I do want to give a little love for the Hudson Valley before we wrap up. All three of you have had personal journeys that led you to living in this area. Artists often bring attention to the unique qualities of the places they live, celebrate the areas they live in. So, quick answers, we'll just, without diving into too much detail on the pieces themselves, we'll just kind of give a little love, a little shout out. Can you each think of a piece of art that recently filled you with love for the Hudson Valley that you saw or heard?
A piece of art. I think it's back to a collaborative thing for me. Because I've met so many artists and people, that's within the arts. Whether it be administrators or programmers or anything like that. I can't just say just one. I'm just grateful for all of who I've met and who continue to do their thing through the journeys.
I'm going to shamelessly say Safe Harbors.
That's awesome.
Well, so it's been really, really wonderful for me to talk to all of you. I feel like my artistic soul has been nourished by this conversation, and it's given me a lot to think about. Where can people find out more information about each of you, see your work, and keep an eye out for upcoming projects? And are there any upcoming projects that you want to mention?
I live down the block. That's it.
Yeah, just walk along Broadway, so you'll be there
You'll
somewhere.
see me.
You can ask them.
Well, that's good to know. This is Show Friday, actually. That happened, so I'm gonna see you there.
Where's that?
It's right here.
Here?
Right here. It's called Natural Shots.
Mm-hmm.
It's highlighting or raising awareness to domestic violence awareness. So I'm going to be doing a reading from the play Natural Shots. And I'm telling you, you can't miss this. Everybody needs to be there.
And there's a flyer for those here with us. There's a flyer out in the doorway about that as well.
Oh, it's online too.
It's online.
It's online, social media, digitization.
Will this be streamed as well? Or?
I don't know if it's gonna be streamed, probably Facebook, if anything. Possibly.
TBD.
TBD. It's a great play. Anybody can get here for it. I saw it was a reading done here at Safe Harbor a few years ago of this same play, and it's very powerful.
Yes, it's Friday at 7. I could be reached if you want to add me on Instagram. I'm on Facebook too, but not really. I'm like okay on there. I_AM_Lotus. That's capital LOTU capital Z.
Lotus with a Z.
And it's an acronym. But when you get my book, you buy my album, you get to learn the acronym. Okay.
Daniel?
You can find me online, Daniel Villegas Music. You'll be able to, however you listen to music, you can find me there. You could hear some of the stuff, that I do have. And I think one of the things that I'm doing is coming up November 4th. If you are around, I'm helping with a fundraiser for the Wallkill River School in Montgomery. I put a lineup of several artists that are going to do some cool stuff together. So that's probably the way to reach me. It's through Instagram or Facebook, or if you meet me personally and so forth.
Yeah, amazing. And for anybody who hasn't gotten enough of me already, I'm a theatrical director, and you can find out what's up with me on Instagram at Edward Gibbons Brown, EDWARD GIBBONS BRWN. This has been fantastic. Thank you to the panelists. Thank you to June, Lisa.